Hi everyone, today I'm going to go through some tips and tricks you can use to contour your nose and make it look a little bit slimmer or possibly alter the appearance of the shape a little bit. So if you're interested in seeing how to do that, keep on watching. So the techniques I'm about to use to contour my nose I actually got from a makeup artist that I found on TikTok. I believe her name is Terry Tomlinson. I will put her links down below. But basically the concept is that you are constantly shifting the shadows and the light on your nose to sort of create a straighter appearance. I personally found that concept really helpful for me because when I'm looking at people contour their nose on TikTok and YouTube, it's usually someone who has a pretty straight nose already. Maybe their nose is a little bit wide, but all they're really doing is making a straight line down the middle and putting a dot of highlight wherever they want the tip to be. And it basically looks great, but for anybody that has any sort of bend in their nose or maybe a ball on the end of their nose, that technique doesn't really work. You actually need to put in a lot more effort to make your nose look straighter or slimmer. And so I found the technique that she mentioned very, very helpful. So to do this, I'm going to use the Westman Atelier Contour Stick in Biscuit. And I'm going to start at the top here, contouring how I normally would contour, which is to basically follow the bridge up until my nose sort of starts going outwards, and then I'm going to be a little bit more careful, and I'm going to use the very edge of the contour stick to try to be as straight as possible over the bump in my nose. You can see that it already didn't really work. This one dipped out a little bit because that's the natural shape of my nose. So I'm going to go in and try to go over it a little bit. Actually, it might be helpful if I used a brush for this. Okay, so the other thing too is that because of how my bone structure is here, it actually catches light on the outside because it pops out. So I'm not only going to draw the line closer to the middle of my nose, I'm going to bring it out to the end of where that sort of bump ends. Okay, so that's where we're going to end it with the bump on my nose. I'm going to very lightly feather it out towards the ball or the tip of my nose. And usually what I like to do is put contour where my nose catches light. So if I turn to the side, you can see that my nose actually comes up right around here. So right around there is where it actually catches quite a lot of light. So I like to sort of just darken this area and avoid a highlight in this area so that it doesn't catch so much light and so it doesn't emphasize where my nose tip is the most prominent. So I'm going to straighten out the roundness because again, we're working with the way light hits our nose and shifting the shadows and the light to make our nose appear a certain way. And by cutting where our nose is catching light or adding light to where it's casting a shadow naturally, we can start to change the appearance of the shape. So I think I want a little triangle over here. I'm not going for a square. I think that's too much of an aggressive change from the actual shape of my nose. And I'm going to do the same thing over here because the ball of my nose comes out a little bit more and it's going to catch light here the same way that the bump in my nose was catching light here. So I'm going to bring the contour all the way down to the side over here. I'm actually going to bring the contour a little bit forward too. I think I want the tip of my nose to be emphasized a little bit lower. Okay, so now that all that contour is in place, I'm going to start blending it out. I just have a brush over here. It's a pretty dense eyeshadow brush. And I'm just going to pat where I want the most of the color to stay. And I'll start to feather out after, once I've sort of softened these edges. You kind of have to be careful on the tip of your nose, especially with mine because it is round and it's really easy for the bristles to just go around the shape and make it appear round again. So I'm going to be very careful to just tap lightly so that that doesn't happen. And now that I've softened all the edges closer to the middle, I'm going to go back out here and soften these edges. Sort of blend out this way. I think I am going to add a little bit more contour here. And basically what I'm doing is I just looked at my nose and I saw where it's catching light, where I don't want it to, which is over here on the tip and on the sides where there was a bump on my nose, and I added shadows to those areas. And what I'm going to do now, once I'm done blending out the contour, is add a little bit of concealer that's a few shades lighter than my skin tone to sort of bring forward the areas that I want to bring forward. So this is not necessarily a problem looking at me face on, but I feel like if I turn to the side, there's actually quite a far indent right here. And I feel like this area gets lost a little bit because it's so far back. So I'm going to add some concealer just to that area to bring it forward a little bit. We can bring it down a little. And I'm going to just, I don't think I'm going to put a dot of concealer because that would make the tip of my nose look round, which it already is, and we're trying to make it look a little bit more angular right now. So I'm actually going to do a pretty thin line just across, and I'm going to blend those out now. I'm using a fluffier brush to do this. It's just what I have at the table with me right now, but with a very light hand because I don't want it to drag out onto the bump in my nose and start to look wobbly. But you could see how that already brought my nose a little bit more forward, which actually looks, I think, pretty nice. And I'm going to pat out. I think I took the brightness a little too far down. Blend it into my forehead as well. And then for over here, I'm just going to use the flat part of the brush. I'm not going to let the bristles do this on my face because that's going to spread the color out and sort of lose the placement a little bit. I'm just going to use the side and just sort of tap, not really moving the brush anywhere. Tap this way, tap that way. And now once I have less on my brush, I'm going to start moving it in towards the middle and bottom. So I think after doing this for the past 5 minutes, it doesn't really look like much, but I think I'll put a side-by-side comparison of what my nose looked like before the contour and after so we could see the difference. I think at this point also, if you wanted to put actual highlighter on your nose, you could do that at this point too. I'll just do a little bit just to show you. I only ever really do it in the center over here. I usually leave the tip blank again because I don't like to bring attention to that area. I usually don't spend this much time contouring my nose. So I sort of just like to put some shadow over the tip and sort of leave it, bring more emphasis into the center here, and then call it a day. All right, so that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.